We did, but it's open again. Okay.
We are live without video. There will be audio. Is that where we're at right now?
It's being streamed.
Yeah, and I'll just go double check with Kathy that she can hear us.
Probably need somebody to talk in order to
Okay.
confirm that.
The audio doesn't work.
Either that or we'd all just mouth and.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You can't see anyway, so that doesn't work.
It's really something, isn't it?
Yep.
How many
Then it's
different
feedback.
pieces and parts move perfectly all day long?
Right.
And then that one little thing.
Yeah,
The main theme here is.
we're being heard, so
We're good?
Yep.
It's 4:15 and we will call this a water and sewer committee meeting to order. I do apologize for the technical difficulties. We're not able to stream a video portion of the meeting today, audio only. So I'll do a quick who is here. Committee members, myself, Grant Russell, Brian Bowman from Ward 5, Dan DeArmond from Ward 4, Randy Greeno at large, Josh Palmer from Ward 7, from the administration, Service Safety Director Rob Martin, City Engineer Jeremy Kalb, Jason Phillips from the Water Treatment Supervisor, and guest Holly Frisch's Ward 1 rep. Do appreciate this is the first time for the Water and Sewer Committee meeting of the 2024-25 council year, and the first time that we have 5 members of the committee, up from the previous 3 members. I do thank everyone who actually requested or volunteered to be on this committee. And Jacqueline, I'm sorry, and Jacqueline is here, Jacqueline Holman from the administration too. This is I thank everybody on the committee for volunteering or requesting to be on this committee to serve. I think there's going to be a lot of work for water and sewer in the next 2 years. This meeting is not a reexamination of the 2023 water rate increase. The previous Water and Sewer Committee unanimously supported the increase as presented by the administration. The previous council voted 8-1 to accept the committee's recommendation for approval of the or support of that rate increase. We are not here to rehash or re-go through that conversation. Instead, our purpose today is to look at the process for changing utility rates in the future. And if the committee will let me to give me the opportunity to kind of put a framework around how I see what we're discussing, I appreciate that. I'll start off by saying I don't expect this topic to be for us to come to a conclusion or make recommendations after 1 meeting or 2 meetings. I think this is going to be take a little bit of work as we examine some different things. Also, I think that as a general statement, we're looking at all of the utilities: water, wastewater, stormwater. This is not simply an examination of the process to examine water rates or the process to examine wastewater rates. It's to look at all our utility rates and also to look at both the inside and outside rates. So I think this is all encompassing, and that is what I gathered that I heard during the discussions in council. If there's disagreement on that, we can talk about that in a little bit. I see our issues broken down into really 3 kind of general questions with a fourth kind of side question at the end. the questions that I think that the committee needs to investigate and answer. Number one is who should have the authority to adjust utility rates in the future? The second question is, what is our process for calculating utility rates? The third question is, what is the frequency for reviewing rates and making adjustments? And then the kind of the fourth side question is, we'll make recommendations to the full council. How do we implement those recommendations? Is it in the water and sewer rules? Is it in our codified ordinances? Is it simply processes and that we somehow implement it into the nature of the operations? So at a high level, three questions: who has the authority, or who has who is going to actually initiate or do the process? The who of it, the what is the process for actually doing the calculations, and the when of it, or is what is the frequency? And so with that as a general introduction to the committee members, I'm looking for thoughts on how I've attempted to frame the issue, and questions about, without trying to delve into answering the questions. I think our goal today is simply to make sure that we have a framework of what we're trying to do. And so I'm looking at discussion on this general framework of what we're looking at. And I open that up to anybody of the four committee members who have comments that they want to make. Mr. Greeno.
I believe that you've kind of hit the nail on the head here, what we want to talk about. I mean, the frequency of the rates will probably be one of the easiest things that we can decide on doing. The process is going to take some time, and who has the authority? We're going to have to go through that. As you have mentioned, this is not something that's going to be looked at one time. This is going to take several months to probably get this procedure done. So, but I think you've hit the questions that we need to answer on these.
I agree. I agree with Randy. I think that is the outline we want to follow. So I'd like to take the shot at the first one, like who should have the authority to adjust? Or
We don't, at this point in time, we don't want to talk answers. Let's make
Okay.
sure we have,
all right,
Josh, Brian, if I see you nod, but if you have thoughts on this.
No, I think it's laid out just the way we need to lay this out, identify who or what body is going to set the rates, define the process, and then how often this process takes place.
Yeah, and I think that we really kind of answered that fourth question out there with what does that process look like, whether that's water and sewer rules or if that's codified ordinance, you know.
Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
Before you move on.
And then to Rob and Jeremy and.
I just want to make the point that I appreciate the outline, and I think you're on the right path on what guidance you're going to give us as a committee. I just want to make sure that, point out that we constantly evaluate our numbers, our balance sheets when it comes to revenues coming in and expenses going out from operations to capital. So we knew this was coming. We anticipated a need for a change of an adjustment of a rate. The reality of it was, though, if you recall, we had some key projects that had to be accomplished before we could, in fact, make that change. So we're here because there were some difficult decisions made. We saw it coming, but the biggest point was we weren't going to make a change until we were able to have true numbers and moving forward. So I love the outline. I think you're on the right path, and I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we don't take away from that. This wasn't a surprise to us. We saw this coming and knew it was going to happen. There were a few things that had to be accomplished before we could do it, though. So just wanted to make that point.
One of the questions that has come up in discussion is, and this is probably related more to a little bit to the process of calculating the rates, but it's kind of foundational. last year we talked about making, doing some capital analysis of the water department. I think we have a long-term control plan in process for, waste, sewer, is it wastewater?
Sanitary.
Sanitary. And I'm wondering where the construction of those plans and those, like, the big capital items, where they fit into any conversation or into these conversations. And if it's, you know, what's the sequence? Can you do these things in parallel? Because I can't imagine you could create rates without having an idea of what your capital out, like what the water capital outlook plan looks like. I mean, you can have some ballpark ideas, but I'm interested to hear where they fit in, and then also an update as to where we are in those two efforts, the long-term control plan and where we are in getting the water capital projects kicked off, and so I can look at how we stage this conversation.
So I'll start and feel free to jump in. We had certain years of projects that we already had established, from the belt project, generators, CO2. There's a handful of projects that between designing them, and then with the supply chain, that they're finally coming to fruition this year and the next 2 to 3 years. So we have those in place, but looking at the cost of those as well as the operational increases, we can't look too much further past those because of where the fund was going to be if we didn't make a change. Knowing we've had these philosophical questions about, well, what if this type of user came in? What if this housing development happened? What if scenarios? Is it a pressure thing? Is it a volume thing? Where do we know what we use on a daily basis on average. We know what our total system capacity is. We feel we know where the sweet spot is of where we can run efficiently without redlining our system. With that though, Jason's an expert at running a treatment plant in his being a superintendent. Jeremy's an expert at civil engineering. At the end of the day, you look at this, we are not the experts of what that looks like if the what if scenarios happen. And that's where we feel we've talked about bringing in, having an organization that has those expertise. They can look at our current model, our current plant, current comprehensive water system and say, this is our current state. And if this is where we see your priorities of capital projects are for the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever that looks like. We know we have an aged plant. It's in great condition, but it's an aged plant. We've talked about the raw water line. We've talked about these other scenarios that are going to have to be big decisions in the next 10 to 15 years. So, but you have to plan accordingly. So we've had those philosophical questions, and those are just maintenance of our current system, not to mention the what ifs that I mentioned about growth or potential development. So that's where bringing in those experts that can look at our current model, our current status, and say, this is what needs to get done if nothing changes. And then if you have this happen, scenario A, you'll need to add an SCU. Scenario B, this plus this. Water tower, this is where I put it. How many, etc. Those are the conversations that, and that analysis by a third party can come in and tell us what needs done when, prioritize our projects, and then on top of that, they can say, okay, this is what these are going to cost, and this is how the rate should be adjusted to be able to afford these projects. So you have this expertise that comes in and does that for us, and then we can take it and run with it.
How long does that analysis take?
Oh, typically these, without quoting, 18 months to 2 years when you get a thorough analysis, at least.
And where are we for kicking off the
We're
effort?
preparing to put a bid out for it.
So, yeah, we'll send that as a RFQ. I had that built in,
RFQ, sorry.
yes, you're right, to capital right now on what we're expecting that. So, kind of build off what Rob is saying with that too. I go to Jason and say, hey, I need another 1 million gallons of day. How do you do that? Well, you do this, this, and this. Okay, is that actually our best option going forwards? Someone coming in that's focused on looking at our whole distribution system, our whole treatment plant, our pretty much from a drop of water from where it starts to where it ends. They can look at it and say, well, if you had actually done this, you could have produced the same thing and set yourself up for the next, 5 years or the next million. You're already set up for that next million. So there's a lot of scenarios in there that, like what Rob was saying, where we can get you to that next million, but we don't have the expertise to make sure that when we're spending millions of dollars, is that actually what we need to do? Is that going to set us up for the next expansion, the next million gallons a day that we need to make? So the kind of that master plan, like I said, right now, we have that built into capital. Because of the past couple of years, we have been a little bit lean on water line replacement. We're going to be pushing quite a bit of those out. That's kind of our main focus. We have a couple areas that we.
Real quick, RFQ, so.
Yeah, so
Q-
I guess we're done.
Q2?
Q2, yeah.
Is it
So
written now? It's not written yet.
we have an RFQ ready.
Okay,
Like
it
I
is
have a
written.
draft copy.
Okay.
I might have to revamp a couple things, but I guess what I was saying with that is our next couple of years of capital, we have a lot of catch-up things to do while this master plan is going, we can do in tandem. There's some stuff at the plant he knows is going to happen no matter what, no matter if the master plan is there or not. These are items we have to do. Those are items we got to address immediately. So while this master plan is going, when we get to, is it a next SCU unit? Is it a line press? Is it a water tower? Is it, anything like that? Those questions will be answered as we're kind of catching up to that.
Is that the term we're using, is water master plan?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay, so RFQ, then are we going to RFP or?
So from the RFQ, if we get 10 people, we'll narrow it down to our top 3 or 4, whatever we feel comfortable with. And then we'll have interviews with them, and then we'll get an RFP from that, or reference for proposal, and then we'll ultimately decide after the interviews and RFP process.
And so we would expect to be under contract with somebody to do this in Q,
If we get it out early Q2, by the end of Q2, we could have someone under contract.
oh, serious?
Okay, quick.
Yeah. I mean, we can set our own schedule. Yeah, it's an internal process with us, so we would invite one of you guys or multiple of you guys to those interviews to score the RFQs and stuff. But we could have the RFQ out, have scoring back and all that kind of stuff, and get proposals. Because normally what we do a lot of times when we do the interviews, we kind of have a pre-proposal meeting with them too, so that way they know what we're looking at for a proposal. They have the interview so we can, because a lot of times you can put a lot of stuff on a piece of paper. Everyone's going to tell you the same exact thing, but until you get that face-to-face talk with them and they start showing their expertise in that kind of background, then, we really value those, and then they'll already have their proposal ready to go. So we try to do that, so we're not, all right, we got 3 weeks here, now we're going to wait 2 weeks here, and then we're waiting another 2 weeks for a proposal. We're trying to keep that all lined up, moving.
Do you then do one, or do you, for the people who are going through the RFP, do you give them a tour of the system or the facilities, like an in-person tour, or are they supposed to, is that part of this process?
It can be. We allow a question period within there. So that way, if they want to come and tour the site, if they want to talk with Jason, if they want to talk with us, we have that capability. If
Does it have to be one tour with all representatives at the same time, or do you do an individual just out of
it
curiosity?
depends on the project, depends on what it is. This is kind of a broad where you wouldn't, but if we do have a project, we do have one. But if it's something that we feel it's going to affect everyone, we put that out with our Bid Express. We'll post that question that everyone can view what the question was asked and what the answer was.
And then when do you come to council for looking for money to start this process?
So that will be the end of that. So that will be the end of Q2. So I guess early Q3 is when we'd be appropriating the money. But I would have someone at the end of Q2. We would have a consultant identified at that
So we
time.
don't have to have preceding money, or we don't have to seed this project with money. to get-
I'll probably have to have a couple $1,000s for startup funds, for advertisements and all that kind of stuff.
And then this whole thing will cost the water, the water master plan will cost, just give me an estimate within like $1 or $2.
$2.
We're looking at around
Around
$1
$1
million.
million.
I was gonna say, I would say between 1 to 1.5,
Give or take.
give or take. I mean, really, that could, it depends on how in depth you wanna go, it could go
Yeah.
up even higher, but, that's where we'll have to start setting those parameters of what we want to see.
I have a question on your financial models. You take all this capital and you build that into your pro forma. I mean, how sophisticated is your model? I mean, you plug in, projects that go from year 6 to year 7 and that kind of, is it?
So I tell you, we have, 2 years ago, we went from a 5-year capital plan to a 10-year capital plan.
Okay.
And we actually sat down and we did every facility and every building, we did a needs assessment. We ranked things. We have a formula we created. It's kind of Jeremy and our brainchild that we came up with this. How do we quantify this objectively and on what's
No, I
needed?
understand about how to generate the
So
data.
then we prioritize things and
Okay.
then Jeremy maps this out. We went to a 10-year capital plan.
So is this on an Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And we work with the department
Okay.
heads, we know the cadence of things, we prioritize things, in this case, a lot of the maintenance of like the water lines and things have been kind of pushed off on a needs assessment
Right.
because of our position, but we have, from vehicles to buildings, it's mapped out.
So does your financial model take into account grant funding? How do you get grant funding on a lot of this, so how do you?
We can only assume so far out, like OPWC and stuff, we know we're roughly going to get $300,000 on that, CDBG, so much every, so it's very tough to map out past, say, year 3.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's coming
Right.
out. We got one with the water infrastructure out at DOD.
But your financial model
So,
can handle it.
It can
It's
handle,
built-
so,
Who developed your model? Is it self-developed or you had a third party build this for you or?
for like the capital and all that, we developed that
Okay.
in-house. Yeah.
Does that then back out to rates? If you know that you have, if you know your operational costs.
Yeah,
It does,
it does, because that's how we developed last year's.
So-
So it's not a, like, you plug this in and it spits out a number. I mean, from
It's a
the
manual
spreadsheet,
process.
it's a manual process, but we can understand what the numbers are coming in, what our revenues and all that are looking.
So the reality of
I
this.
guess to maybe say to ask their questions in a different way, this process that we're headed towards will allow us not to only understand our current needs, but how do we meet our long-term strategic goals as well, correct?
Right, right. So, it is something, it's not you're not gonna have I guess we could get to that point. With this master plan, it'd be beneficial to have that person that's gonna come in they could build those rates in to see. But as we're going through evaluating all that, we can see, okay, is that actually a true number, what they're
I'm just trying to
trying to
understand
see?
how sophisticated your model is and is it, is homegrown, cobbled together, or is it really a professional and it's something that we can really rely on, as we develop our capital needs and our operating costs and it's.
Well, I was
I'm
gonna
pretty
say,
biased to it, but.
Okay.
all right, yeah, it's accurate.
Okay.
And again, we've looked at this a lot of different ways and he's validating it right now. It's looking at, so we ran the different models from the pro formas aspect and we ended up running so many different scenarios. We ended up where we did at the end of 2023. Now it's almost a different angle. He's coming in from the capital side
Yeah.
and he's marching this program and it's ending up exactly where we said we were going to end up in 26, 27.
Yeah.
So again, if you keep validating the numbers different ways you're going through it, it keeps coming back. Is it copyrighted and it says financial
Yeah.
analysis? No, this is a checkbook and this is a balance sheet essentially. We're running it and we're coming up with the right numbers.
So is this long-term plan, you envision this consultant, like, building a financial model for you, or you're gonna give them ours, or are you planning to do you envision them doing rate structure, rate analysis for you
So that's,
independently, or how?
so that's part of that conversation with the third-party vendor.
Okay,
Because I think we could say, here's our system. we want you to prioritize the capital projects and the needs for our current as well as scenario A through D, whatever. And then we get that, and we could pay for that. And then we would know it's gonna cost X over this many years of these projects. And then we could have internal discussions, and we could say, model this out on the rates. Or you could talk to those people, they're capable and they're experts in modeling,
Yeah.
rate modeling, that they could say, this is what it's gonna be over the next 20 years, and this is what you should do with your rate structure, either annually or every third year, or whatever that looks like. And I mean, they had one of these done in 2009 that was it 9?
It was 2009 was that last race.
With the recommendations of the rates.
Yeah.
So that's what, again, I think those are discussions that the committee of administration, we need to have about, you could build that third-party expertise to whatever level we want.
Yeah.
I think the rate structure is not a bad idea. I mean, getting pretty good scrutiny over us coming up with the numbers, and they're accurate, where we got the numbers from and where we're projecting we need to be to create solvency in it. But if you need to pay somebody on a third party to come in and tell you the same thing, so somebody gets reassurance and they're like, okay, they're not hiding anything.
Yeah.
Then so be it. But the numbers are the same.
Have we posted this financial model on our transparency page?
Which one? Our capital plan?
Yeah, this whole,
The capital.
how you came up with the rates, you know, like, it's capital, it's operating, it's the whole thing. Is that, I mean,
It's out there.
Yeah, I mean, not our whole, the whole master sheet of it, but
Not
the
the-
information we used it, the numbers.
So
that
the
were
spreadsheets
in.
and things, no.
Yeah, we pulled snapshots out.
don't we want to get to that point though? I mean, I think we
I-
should. I mean, I think
Maybe
that's.
that's
what
something, that we
Yeah.
discuss with the vendors. It could be
we- Okay.
something that could be put out there. I mean, yeah, it's there.
And the planning horizon that the water master plan is looking at is 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? What,
That's a good question.
how long of a horizon out do you expect this thing to be looking at?
I would,
Oh,
I would say at least a minimum of a 10.
Oh, I was
10 to
figuring 10 to 20 easy.
I
Specifically,
was 20. at
I mean,
least.
specifically with upcoming rules and regulations and just the magnitude of everything that we're going to be looking at. I mean, as Rob mentioned, we're quickly coming up to that 100-year mark of the age of the facility. So, you know, doing a true thorough evaluation of everything to be able to set us up for that easy 20-year mark.
When you all have been around this long enough that you come up with what you need, and then by the time you appropriate the money through a process, and then you bid it out, and then you design it, and then I mean, a project takes 2+
Yeah,
years. If everything runs smoothly, 3 years to completion. So I think it'd be unrealistic not to try to stretch that as far as realistically
I
possible.
think you stretch it to 20, but knowing that probably at 10, there's gonna be something coming through from the EPA that's gonna say, oh, well, we need to review this.
Yeah, it's a good
20-year
point.
plan.
Yeah.
Do we need to- Do we need to move this up
That's a good point.
sooner? I mean, because there's so much changing in the water and wastewater fields as far as regulations. It's hard to predict what's gonna happen in 20 years.
And even if you do it 20 years, it doesn't mean in 5 you don't come back and look at it.
Absolutely. I think this has got kind of a living document that you need to look at
Mhm.
periodically.
I think the PFAS stuff is.
Okay, so,
Yes.
so this last bit was all very water oriented. Changing hats to sewer or wastewater, what do we call it here? What's the common term? Is it wastewater, is it sewer, is it sanitary?
It's wastewater.
Yeah, wastewater is a nice
Nice
word.
word.
It's been called a lot of things.
Stormwater and wastewater.
So, do you all mentally separate stormwater and wastewater?
Mentally, yes.
Now you have. to.
Physically, we should.
You have
Well,
to.
and ideally, we'd be great if we did, right?
Do we, I know we bill for them separately.
Yes.
Do we, and we manage them separately?
Yes, yeah, they're two different
So
accounts.
long-term control plan, even though it touches on both, is really more is really more, wastewater oriented.
Yeah, I mean, there is some storm
One
in
of the
it.
goals
It's a combination.
Because you're
It's-
trying to separate.
You're trying to separate them, so you gotta determine, is this ultimately gonna be a sanitary type project or ultimately a storm? What's the end benefit of it? And that's where, you're gonna have some that are a storm project, you're separating sanitary, but it's
Yeah.
ultimately a storm and vice versa.
So is it fair to think of a long-term control plan as a wastewater with a little bit of storm master plan? Are they similar in nature, or does it not touch, does the long-term control plan not touch the plant?
Well, look, let me take a stab, sorry, we're all kind of tag teaming this, but the reality is, one of the goals is create capacity for your sanitary sewer, right, your sanitary plant. And the long-term control plan is gonna look at the infiltration and things like that, so you can create capacity for your plant by separating those things out. So as much as it is, yes, it's your pollution, a big part of that is focusing on separating out and eliminating those combined sewers or that infiltration of stormwater into your plant.
So then a quick update on where we at with in the long-term control plan
Uh,
process.
they finalized, or they just finished flow monitoring. So they're compiling all that data, building the model off of that, so that will show pipe capacity, where it's surcharging, all that kind of stuff. That will be next couple months, and then ultimately the end of 25, December 25 is when we have to have a full report to the EPA.
Full report about what?
Of the amended, long-term control plan,
Okay.
for the-
December of 2025?
2025. Because
What is
24
long-term control plan?
So long-term control plan, that's it, that's looking at all our combined sewer overflows. And so what we've done, we have monitored all of or in areas where we've determined, monitored our sanitary system to see where it's surcharging because of storm infiltration or something like that. So what that will do is we'll be taking storm out of the sanitary,
So we're
which will be
recording
drained.
flow to each one of those outlets?
Yeah, so we have flow monitors at our CSO outlets,
Okay,
SSOs and stuff like that.
okay.
But it'll model of where we're during a flooding event or during rain events, where are we surcharging sanitary? Because, we're processing 40 million gallons a day when we have flooding events or rain events or something like that. So kind of going back to your original of the master plan with the wastewater side, there's kind of two different animals with that. You got one where it's a confined sewer. So you're looking at all of your sanitary lines and seeing how that storm affects it. Well, then you can look at one of what your plant's long-term is with the EPA requirements and all that. We have two different systems here where the water is a pressurized system where a lot of that is determined by the plant, by your tower heights, by the ground level and all that, where your sanitary majority of that is all gravity fed. So what you'd be mainly looking at is make sure your corridor sewers are going to be able to hold what you're putting into it, type thing. So our long-term control plan right now is kind of evaluating that. But our next step, if we wanted to go farther with that, we could look at, okay, from a plant side, we have all this coming in. What's our next steps with, the PFAS and some other EPA requirements that are coming in? What do we need to do with that? So there's kind of two different animals that you have to deal with on a master plan on that. You could have it all as one, but right now our main focus because what requirements are with EPA and what we're seeing with our plan is our control or CSO long-term control plan. So that's why we're doing that now.
I know that we initially, as soon as they started doing this last round of long-term control plan work, identified the issue over in the cemetery, for example, and we took action on that
Yeah.
immediately. Do you see over the next 2 years between now and when this thing is due to the amended plan is due to the EPA, additional projects that will be actionable that we know we have to do?
Yeah, we've identified 2 more areas that we're investigating.
And so that will, pardon the pun, will
Yeah.
flow into the capital plan. We'll
Yes,
see those out of so
yeah,
it's not like we're just standing still in the interim.
right. And we already had a long-term control plan already, so we kind of have a a baseline, if you want to say, to go off of. This is an amendment. So we kind of know rough what projects, not saying they're going to happen, but we kind of have an idea that this could be potentially be a project. That's what our consultant's looking at, is verifying those projects as well, as if that's actually applicable project to do or if it's something new. But along with you're saying, yes, as through the flow monitoring, we're seeing some of these where we need to address, so those will be built into the capital plan.
Are we behind? I mean, you've been saying like on the water side, we've been behind pushing capital projects out. I mean, is that on the wastewater side too?
I mean, the sooner we get stormwater out of our sanitary, the better.
Yeah, you can
So
do it fast
if
enough.
you want to
Yeah.
say,
No,
yes,
I know.
we're behind,
Yeah, I know.
for any kind of we're not like behind the ball on any kind of regulation or anything like that. This is more
Yeah.
to make sure we're treating actually sanitary
Yeah.
and not stormwater.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, in my,
Well, you can,
yes,
you can
we
frame
like
that
to,
any way you want.
I'd like to be
Okay,
certain.
yeah, I get you. Yeah, all right.
So a lot of this is really, this last bit of conversation really centers around the second question, the process for calculating utility rates. It's kind of like an input question. What goes into the financials, the costs that we need to cover and with rates? And this was all kind of, so, and what I'm hearing is that you're never gonna have you're always gonna have projects and analysis that's gonna change it's gonna change the long-term view. I mean, it's just never gonna be static.
Right.
We're not gonna have a time where we're gonna hit April 15th, 2025, and we say, here's the next 10 years of projects, and it will actually be that.
Right.
So then our when we look at that process for when we look at our process for calculating rates, we just need to know that that's part of the inputs is constant change.
And I can kind of add one thing on that, kind of how we've always talked or we've always looked. Like our homegrown system, we feel comfortable with, we know how to use it, we know what we're getting out of it, we know how to read and all that. But I'd like to be here for the next 30 years, but it can't guarantee I'm going to be here. It can't guarantee any of you guys or, Rob or Jason. The next set of people that are coming in that are going to be having this conversation are they going to look at our tables or our graphs or spreadsheets and say, no, we're not using that, we're going to start over, and that wasn't worth in the long run for the city? Or do we look at something where we have someone coming in to give that rate structure, to look at it? Is that more of a valuable type tool than what we have? Like I said, I'm comfortable with what we have, but we always got to think about what's tomorrow, the next group of people coming in, how are they going to be using our system?
I would say every so often, you should probably have a third party look at it, but I mean, on an annual, I mean, you
Right.
should probably, it's always nice to get something else to look at.
Right.
I don't know what that, 5 years, I don't know, something, but,
Mhm.
I don't know.
So back to the committee, so there's three general, for lack of a better term, questions on the table. I think they need some analysis individually before you get to saying, hey, this is what we recommend. And just thinking on the first question, if you're talking utility, three different utilities, you're talking about different places in Ohio Revised Code that gives guidance or gives law as to how they have to be handled. So there's some investigation into each one of those. So there's some work to be done here. So the question to the committee is how, given that we have an agreement on the framework of what we're looking at, we got some basic foundational information concerning where we are with our long-term efforts. How do you want to proceed? How do we want to divvy this up to look at and make some progress on coming up for options or what we should be examining for the three questions. Phrased another way, what's next?
I think that we all as the committee need to be very familiar with what the current water and sewer rules are. You know, get them out and take a look at them, read through them really good. Also the codified ordinances. You know, we need to take a look and see what's already there before we can start changing things. We need to see what's already there. It's just my opinion.
Well, do we want to split this up a little bit? As some of these acronyms are being thrown around, I see you nodding and they're going over my head. The engineer to your right seems to be understanding a lot. Would it be right to have Dan and Randy take more detailed look into what goes into number two, into the second question?
Yeah, I'd be very interested in
process?
number two,
Because-
how we're calculating.
Because when it comes down to doing research on Ohio Revised Code, I know Josh loves reading Ohio Revised Code just as much as me, but
Puts me to sleep every night.
it doesn't take professional skill to read Ohio Revised Code like it does to understand what's going on inside a water or a wastewater treatment plant. And I'd be happy to, kind of dig into the first. I think the frequency question it doesn't answer itself, but it's kind of dependent on what you find out with number two. With the second. So if there's homework to be done, I'm looking to, because I'm kind of like not looking at Dan and Randy.
Yeah.
I've already go around and watch you guys.
I'm just sitting here, okay, on number two, what are we gonna, so we review it, and what would the committee need back, I guess?
I guess I'd be willing to dig into process with Dan on that.
Okay.
Would it benefit you two? Sorry if would it benefit you two if you're gonna dive into that, to understand, like, see our modeling?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, just can walk you through
Yes.
and show you exactly the why and the how behind it. Okay.
Because I think part of that is, if you look at, if we look at what we do to kind of come up with great ideas, then you get an idea of how often you need to take a more in-depth external look at it. So I was reading that 2009 rate study, and I think I shared it with everybody. And where the frequency question came in, and a little bit about this process, as I was looking at this, it's like, we don't need to do this every year. That's just overkill. Every 5 years, maybe. Every time some kind of external event or something makes it worthwhile, possibly, but I don't know the answer to the question. But but in my mind, doing that annually was not the answer. And I didn't know if that's what in the council meetings, if that's what people were thinking, oh, we're gonna do a rate study every year. And so I think part of this, to understand the process, gets you an understanding of when do you think that the model needs, or whatever our process is, needs more in-depth review.
It seems to me that your operational costs change that, I mean, you see a labor trending up and chemicals trending up, but that's not what the big fluctuation is gonna be. And that's gonna drive your frequency. The big fluctuation is taking on capital projects. If you get into a huge, that's what's gonna drive the fluctuation, and that's gonna drive the frequency.
Well, we did see a very large shift in operational expenses post-COVID.
Okay,
Just
yeah.
chemicals
sure.
way doubled in price and some
Materials.
materials went through the roof. And so we saw a very large shift operational expenses wise. But yes, to your point, hopefully that most of the industry has said that what we're now seeing is just going to stay at that higher level and we just need to adjust.
So we're not expecting a retreat.
No, most of the chemical suppliers have basically told us that get used to it. They're going to stay at this high level or continue to creep up.
And you're not gonna see it on labor either.
Right.
Power's not gonna go down. I mean, so
brass prices and materials on distribution or specifically with the lead and copper rule, that is driving brass prices through the roof. Because there's federal mandates on projects for communities now, which just makes supply very scarce.
When you're talking about the frequency of it, the modeling that we've created takes into consideration, because it's all one fund. So you see your operations, you see your minimum balance, you see your carryovers, you see your capital inserted into this model. And it's a 20-year pro forma. I mean, 20. Yeah, we see the decline, we see that happening where, okay, we have got to make sure we keep the needle where it needs to be above the minimum balance. And we see that projection with the 10-year capital plan. And it'll be more distinct when we actually have the master plan done, where somebody says, okay, here's where you're going to insert these dollars for these projects that need to get done. So then we can actually refine it even better to actually know. So the frequency of rated analysis, I think it'll determine, but we'll see it coming. We'll see that balance, like, okay.
Unless you have an emergency.
Of course, that all bets are on,
Catastrophic failure
that's when we're
right.
pulling everyone in and go, we have a problem.
Yeah, right.
And then we're gonna have a bigger conversation.
It would seem to me, though, we could look at those 10 to 20-year plans, but if we're in the red, it doesn't do us any good.
Right.
Because we need to be in the black. That's what this conversation is about, making sure we're in the black. Not only are we covering our costs, but looking for the future. Right.
And that's it, in the red, and we have to, red is a different term because a minimum balance is not necessarily a negative variance. If you understand, I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence. That's not saying we're bankrupt, but the minimum balance per the
And who
EPA
sets
standards.
that?
The EPA sets that you
And it's
have got
based
to have
on-
X.
on-
It's 3 months of operation.
Operational expenses.
So and that's another number that was
Okay.
not adjusted until we really dove into this because, hey, if it's costing this per month to run, then that means our minimum balance has to be this.
Yeah.
And so with that adjustment, yeah, so you can't fall under that or the EPA is gonna come in and go, okay, fix it. And if you don't know how to fix it, we're gonna tell you how to fix it. And it's gonna be, we're gonna increase the rates.
Yeah.
So.
So good. I would say, is the city's philosophy, we're always gonna, pay cash? And, you know, I mean, we're always gonna build a fund and pay, are we ever gonna borrow money? Is that ever been on the table, like these big capital projects, like borrow $20 million to, you know, and then you're depreciating it over whatever?
No, that's a great question.
I mean, and debt service is all calculated into the pro forma, which is past debt that we did take in.
Oh, so your model takes, okay, good.
And
All right.
then that, and I believe it even shows when the debt falls off and then when the cash balance
Okay.
begins to change because of that. And then ultimately, that's a philosophical decision, is when we get the master plan done, okay, are we going to do small projects and pay cash, or are we going to take a large loan and spread it out over time?
Looking at everything from grant opportunities, interest rates, obviously to borrow money. I mean, there's a lot of variables there, but the conversation's definitely been had. We needed to get here before we could actually get there or start down that road. But no,
It pays to be patient, right?
it does.
Build your capital, pay with cash, you know, and leverage your grant money, right? I mean, so we want to be patient, but you can't, you got to repair before failure,
How about
right?
the-
I mean, you can't, you know.
Right.
But you also don't want the misunderstanding is that you're gonna build your, who knows what a plant's gonna cost whenever we need to
I
replace
know.
it. We're not, but our goal is not to build this pile of cash that we're gonna pay cash for a plant. That's not it. That's not the misunderstanding. It's a
Yeah.
balancing act of what's going on. When that happens, we need to be prepared. Those are the ones I think you're gonna have your bond issuances
Right.
and things like that.
So we've borrowed money before, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so,
When you built a wastewater treatment plant, you borrowed. We didn't pay cash for that.
tell me about that. What,
Actually, I don't even remember how many million that was. I know that we
tens
were.
of millions or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
you know, I couldn't
I
tell you.
can't come up with a number anymore.
I mean, I can find
What
it.
it was.
We have
So
it.
it's a
but-
big number. Okay.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you build a whole new plant, it's a big number.
Yeah, Columbus's new water plant has the number has a B in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Uh-huh.
we should avoid that.
Is stormwater so close to wastewater that it doesn't need a separate conversation? Like the creation of a stormwater rate? Like, what is it? I think I pay $4 a bill right now for storm. And I don't, is it six?
Six, I think.
And I don't know what goes into the creation of that rate. Is there a model for it? Is it,
We have, I wasn't prepared to talk about this. We
that's what
did some,
I asked,
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Jeremy. I get $1 on it.
Well, you know, if you recall, we actually did some very intense modeling and comparison storm rates a while back, taking into consideration where we are and where we might need to adjust because of some of the other storm projects that for maintenance, like the Eagle Creek Dry Basin and things like that. And so those are conversations that need to be had in the future. So I think you guys can jump in. I think that they are close enough that they do complement each other because one impacts the other. But when it comes to rate structure, storm is its own animal. And because of the imperviousness, the comparisons, I mean, if you recall, we had this conversation that, you know, houses and grass and things are hard to compare, and modeling they should just create one model and it would be easy for everyone just to follow in the state of Ohio. But it's so across the board. But the one thing you can compare in Findlay, Ohio to somewhere else in Ohio is Walmarts are pretty much Walmarts. Myers look pretty much like Myers, et cetera. Those examples. So then you can start comparing what the rate in Columbus or rate in Toledo is compared to Findlay based on the impervious square footage and things like that across the board. So then you're starting to compare apples to apples. And again, I don't ever want the misunderstanding to be that we're trying to compete and we have a margin that we can increase our rates and still be lower. That's not it. But if you're looking at what it costs to run a storm system, sometimes we're not actually covering our area. We have got to compete to cover our storm. So.
And I think also, and stop me if I'm wrong, but when this CSO long-term control plan comes out, we don't know what's going to be in there. There could be a possibility of some large capital projects for that, just for that plan itself.
Right.
I mean, they will give us time to build this stuff, but that's, could be expensive,
Yeah.
you know, detention basins or, you know, you just don't know until that report is completed.
Mhm.
2 points to the December of 2025 and we finish this thing and we then get input into the projects. That's what our process is we're trying to design, what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the ability to handle those when those big CapEx requirements come, that's input into our black box and rates come out the other end type of thing. I mean, that's the pure goal of what we're trying to do here. But I had asked that I'd come back to stormwater because it hadn't been talked about, and I'm wondering is, to my simple mind, utilities is, because it's all on the same bill, it's utilities. Is it right to include stormwater in this conversation at this time? Or does the inclusion of stormwater into this process bog everything down?
No, I agree. I think it needs to be included as part of this.
Not going away.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we focused on sanitary, we have action items, we're moving forward with the long-term control plan, we'll have answers, right? And we're not standing idle, we're getting some projects done. Same with water. And we're gonna start the master plan, we're getting some projects done. I think it's as important to just have that conversation, look at the analysis, have you all see the information, and then maybe we do nothing, but the conversation should be had.
Because I mean, you get your bill, right, and it says $160, but there are 3 variables there, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think that makes sense.
So I'm gonna take a crack at summarizing what we've talked about and saying as to what I think I heard our next steps are. There is an agreement that we are talking all utilities, water, wastewater, stormwater, both inside and outside.
When you say outside, you're talking outside the city. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Which would really only be sanitary and water, because storm is not charged to outside municipality. So just to clarify.
Do we even handle that outside ever? No, we don't. That's just on the-
But we would be looking at all 3.
Because it's 3 utilities, there's variables for all 3, whether they're inside, outside, we're an Ohio revised code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have our three questions at a high level, the who, the what, and the when/frequency, with the 4th overriding is how to implement the recommendations of the committee based on the first 3 questions. And that the next steps, Brian, Dan, and Randy are going to look into the what, into the details of the modeling that we currently do, et cetera, and work with administration on getting a better understanding of that. Josh and I will look at question number 1, the who question, and do some work on that before we come back and discuss again. And as to when to come back and discuss, there's 2 ways we can do this. We can put a date on the calendar right now, or we can do some due diligence or do some work, and then at a later date say, okay, we're right, we have something worthy of having a conversation, let's meet. My preference is to put a date on the calendar, because having a deadline seems to get people's attention a little bit better.
I'm good with that.
So I would suggest, or I suggest that we look at Wednesday, March 20th before our next council meeting. And then it's Wednesday, March 20th, because
It's the day after.
Tuesday, March 19th is a primary, and we will not be having a council meeting that day.
Oh.
So we could do that Wednesday, or we could do the Monday before the primary, Monday, March 18th. Based on how this has gone, we've gone about an hour. I'm wondering if we'd be better to go on a Monday, so we have flexibility in our time and not have to cut us off.
There is a Parks and Rec meeting.
So you get Parks and Rec and Traffic Commission that day,
What times?
3 or 2:30, and then 4.
For Parks and Rec.
I'm not available that whole week. That whole week, yeah. We roll into April. April 1 or 3.
26. March 26th on Monday.
I will be out of town.
I'm not available April 3rd.
How about April 8th? Anything going on that day, Rob? Sure thing.
No, we could do that.
My
at-
stomach
in the
dropped.
dark. How you do it about 3 o'clock in the afternoon if everyone's available?
That's pushing me through.
You know what April 8th is, right?
You won't be working.
Yeah.
That's true, I won't be working that day.
Oh,
That's
that's
right.
good.
I will be.
Oh, yeah, you will.
April 1 or 3.
It's not on your calendar.
Was there, we're gonna April 1 or 3.
Those are both good for me.
3 is not good for me.
We're
April,
talking April, if we get to March.
We moved right on.
Oh, we went right into March. Okay.
well, I don't think the first week of March is enough time. So I don't think 2 weeks is enough time.
Okay.
And for us to really,
But that, anytime,
make progress, the next one you're not available
Right.
for. So that gets us into April.
I'm good with the first or third.
How about April 1 at 4 PM?
Let's do it. Dissertation done on how the West is won.
we always gonna have them here.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. And then to the end result of this thing as a thought. I kind of don't think that the standard one-page committee report sheet does justice to what we're trying to discuss. I think what we're looking to do is put together a kind of more detailed report of here's the questions that we're considering, here's the option, here's what our research showed, and here is our recommendations to full council. Here's the action items we want council to consider. And it might be a multi-page document versus a one-page committee report. So and I kind of think that, so as I've been thinking about strategic planning and some of the issues that have come up with that, that's going to be more common coming out of committees and ad hoc committees for some of the more weighty issues. And I think this is the first one that warrants that type of treatment. So that is mentally what I'm kind of working towards. If you disagree.
I was thinking, what do you envision Randy and I and Brian bringing to this committee? Like, after we go through the financial modeling, what do you kind of, what is our deliverable?
I don't know,
Yeah, I don't need
because I don't know the details, but I would hope that as
we'll
you,
have to work through that.
as you dig into that, I think there's some brainstorming into that part, because one of the things we're trying to do is make a recommendation here. And it's not a recommendation that says your model should look like this and cell E14 should have this calculation. That's way too detailed. But it should, but there's something high. When we say answering the frequency question, we're going to do X every so often, it's defining what X is. What is that the frequency of which we're going to do? And maybe it's
Okay, we'll work through it.
I don't know.
Well, maybe sitting down and working, seeing it,
Yeah, right, it'll help.
it'll evolve to a deliverable perhaps.
That's why I volunteered you guys for the hard question.
All right, thank you.
And Josh and I do the fun stuff.
And if any of us can be of any assistance in this, whatever you're going after, obviously some are more,
Yeah.
but we're here to make this work for everyone.
You want to try to set a date for
Yes.
some of us to go through? All right. Me too.
Jeremy, whenever you want to meet with.
Is it both of you or who's involved in that?
Well, his master child, but yeah, we meet in his office and we'll walk through it. Absolutely.
Then for the sake of a committee report, I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend continued discussions. For a second.
Second.
Josh, all in favor of continued discussions, please say aye.
Aye.
We'll say aye. So that
You meet your council. Stay on it.
goes through, and without any other order of business, 5:18, we'll call this meeting to a close.
What was the topic? What was the item listed?
Not doing it this week. So you're gone next week.
How about
Determine policies and procedures
We're
for
gonna reduce it to 15?
utility.
19.
I'm sorry, I was in April. week of,
The 19th, week of the 19th.
We can make it, so we do it after council, like 21st.
yes, I still do that.
Yeah, anytime after
Really?
11.
When's that? I'm sorry.
February 21st.
The 21st, I'm wide open.
Yeah, I'm free from 11 on.
I'm not available that whole week.
Okay, that will be, okay.
Jeez.
This retirement stuff's hard stuff, isn't it?
What year is something? Are you been there?
Are you gonna be back on the, when are you?
I will be
The week of
back.
the 26th?
Yes, I will be back.
Are we off?
26 would be here.
No.
We're still live.
Oh, my God, sorry.
26.